Okay, hello everyone. My name is Lazar from Sellers Alley, and today we have Chelsea from SoStocked.com. Hello, Chelsea. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, guys, you haven't seen a lot of me like in the previous month or so, but a lot of team members were doing a lot of nice stuff. One of the biggest things recently, obviously, Prime Day. And we had some live shows and live talks during the Prime Day. I hope that everybody had like great time and like that you had a lot of sales. And one of the things like recently, like obviously the idea of our talk is to have like casual, like everyday communication and talk with somebody that is huge expert. Chelsea, can you tell us more like what kind of stuff are you doing and like what's the main thing that you're focused on?
Yeah, the main thing that I'm focused on is the inventory management side of the Amazon business and the e-com business. Particularly like to talk about the subject of what I have named inventory-minded marketing, which is really just understanding the link between inventory and marketing. And, that really has been the Achilles heel of most Amazon businesses. And so giving a better grasp on what is happening with inventory, especially now, and what techniques, what strategies, and what systems need to be in place for a business to really scale, especially given the inventory climate in Amazon today.
Yeah, and inventory is a huge headache, like during like last year or so for Amazon sellers. I know, like, I used to work as a sales manager for one of the Amazon brands, and like it like inventory was always the biggest headache, and like and like after all the thing with Corona and COVID started, like it even grew so it went terrible basically for everybody. So I know that everybody's having huge problems, and like I had a conversation with Brian Johnson and Liran recently, and we were having some live webinar, and we talked about like what's gonna happen during Prime Day and so on, and like they all mentioned that stocks and inventory management are the biggest issues currently.
Yeah.
So like what do you think is like the biggest problem for Amazon sellers when it comes to inventory?
I think that right now the Amazon seller needs to completely rethink how they handle their inventory. Amazon has kind of forced that to happen. They forced it without warning, which is surprising. They, the minute that they made the policy change, they applied it rather than giving notice. With the IPI limits change, we know that they gave us, a few months to prepare for it. On our end, we have, our inventory software. And we were able to account for that. Right now, we're kind of playing catch up. We're about to release something to handle the storage type limits. But that's been the interesting thing, is we're actually reteaching different processes to Amazon sellers now because of how things have shifted. So it used to be that sellers used to be able to focus on their best sellers, drive sales through their best sellers, and kind of let, the dud products that didn't shake out just kind of sell their way through the Amazon system. And now sellers actually need to be conscious of, their entire catalog as it exists within Amazon. And they need to be inventory conscious now more than ever. It used to be, be inventory conscious so you don't stock out your best sellers. Now it's, so you don't stock out your best sellers, and so you move your overstock out of Amazon so that you also don't stock out your best sellers, because that's taking up room that you vitally need for your best sellers.
Yeah, and when you mention like having problem with stock in both directions, that's affecting marketing as well, like a lot. I know that a lot of people that are selling on Amazon are like need to provide like to implement different strategies, like depending on the amount of stock. Like what do you recommend to do like when you're like getting out of stock, or like when you're getting like when you have a lot of stock, but basically?
So for overstock, it's a different problem than stocking out. They are now two sides of the same coin in terms of, your storage capacity. But in terms of overstock, the first thing is to look at and have a way to analyze what are you overstocked on. And you should be looking at anything 60 to 90 days plus as being overstock. Amazon is recommending 60 days. So that's probably the better way to go rather than 90 days. We used to recommend 90 days, but with the restrictions, 60 days seems to be, a better way to go, especially with your slower sellers where you can get them in, they don't have maybe as much volatility. You can get them into the warehouses in a timely manner, and essentially tactics to sell through that. So there's several different things. You can obviously do flash sales where you bump up the price, maybe do some coupon discounts. You can run it to your list. There's also tools that Amazon has that are now becoming more known, and also new programs that they're introducing. One of the things that you could do, obviously we know about lightning deals, but not everyone may know about outlet deals. Outlet deals is something where it doesn't cost you more money, but they put it on a deep discount sale, and not everything will be able to qualify. But the way that you find out if you qualify is if you go to the inventory dashboard, go to manage excess inventory, there's going to be a button that specifically isolates create outlet deal. You can click on it and see which of your products are eligible. And they do it by looking at, your pricing, looking at the, which is another reason why reducing your pricing may disqualify you. So you want to look at outlet deals before you do, deep discount flash sales. So outlet deals is one. And then the other program that was recently introduced that you can access through the disposal and removal order button is the liquidation, where they'll actually remove your inventory, send it to a liquidator, and within 60 to 90 days, you'll get something back through Amazon from the liquidator. It'll be about 5 to 10% of your retail cost, but it could be a way of recovering some of that.
Yeah, okay, that's pretty good info. So basically, just to repeat it, it's better first to check if you're eligible for the program, and then afterwards, if you're not, then to focus on increasing the price, or doing lightning deals and doing some kind of coupons. And okay, cool. That's
one thing that I will recommend, that's if you need to move something really quickly. Outlet deals should contribute to your sales velocity, but liquidation will not. So if you want to get both the storage space, access to that storage space by moving those units, and the increased sales velocity, you want to do something like an outlet deal, or even your own, flash sales that you drive yourself, or lightning deals, because that also contributes to your sell through, and it contributes to your sales velocity, so that you may, in the coming months have better limits because you've got that 90-day, a boost within that 90-day time frame of sales velocity.
That's pretty cool. So one other thing that I wanted to, I'm just jumping from one topic to another.
Fair.
If you have something that specific that you would like to talk about, please let me know. So basically, when it comes to Prime Day, did sellers have problem with inventory? Did limit for the inventory affected their sales? Do you think that was one of the problems there?
Yeah, I think that, people were having a hard time getting enough inventory in, and it starts to change your strategy. So whether you can say, I stocked out during Prime Day, stocking out is one thing. That's an obvious way of telling that it affected your sales. But if it completely changed your strategy for Prime Day and how you market and what deals you made and what deals you were even offered by Amazon, what you actually qualified for, those things can sometimes be unquantifiable. You can see whether you stocked out, but if you had to completely change your plans, which some people did have to do, that was the problem. So a lot of people had to find ways of quickly getting rid of some of that excess inventory, may not have been able to do it fast enough, and also the limits continue to drop. So the limits were set on the 22nd of April, and then Amazon dropped them on the 16th of May, and then dropped them again a week or so before Prime Day. So it was very hard for sellers to predict. And of course, Amazon's reasoning was they were having such a hard time getting the inventory checked in, and we've seen that 3 to 4 weeks worth of wait time for check-ins once your inventory actually arrives, when it becomes live. So that was the reasoning behind it. Amazon just, so hopefully we can see, with these changes as we adjust to the growing pains, that it actually improves check-in times, if nothing else.
Yeah, definitely. I think like this Prime Day was like the worst when it comes to planning.
Yeah.
Especially like inventory planning. So can you tell us, like at the beginning you mentioned software. What kind of software do you have? Like why people should use it? I know, like, to be honest, I know a lot of people that are using software, and like I heard some positive stuff. Not some, like a lot of them. So for those that didn't hear anything about it, don't know anything about the software, like can you tell us more, like what kind of stuff it can do, and like why should they use it?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a seller. I started selling in 2014, and I really have had no experience in the software space. But it was really, I had a problem with inventory. I knew that my profit margin was really, kind of narrowing. I was having stock outs. I was overstocking on some products, and I tried some other softwares. They didn't really work for me. Asked some of my mastermind friends, what they were using, and they all said that they tried a bunch of things, nothing worked. They went back to spreadsheets. So, that kind of set off some bells in my head, and I decided that, well, maybe I can just meet someone and put together a software. And 2 weeks later, I met my business partner. He's the co-founder of Thomason.com, which if you were around in about 2015, you might have remembered Thomason.com from those days. We partnered up and started putting this tool together. And the magic started when we built out an algorithm, and it was understandable, but there were still parts of the algorithm that people couldn't quite figure out how we were getting to the numbers we were getting to. It's hard to explain it, and that was one of the things that we realized, is that the spreadsheets have worked better than anything else. If people have tried other algorithm-based softwares and gone back to spreadsheets, what was it that the spreadsheets were doing that the softwares weren't? So we basically took the spreadsheets that some of our users, we had a beta testing group, and they sent us their spreadsheets. This is, we had some 6, 7, and low 8-figure sellers in there, and they gave us, this is what we're working with. This is what's working for us. It's just so tedious. It's prone to mistakes. And so we retrofitted and we built those spreadsheets out, and we built all those concepts into the software. And then from that point, because it was understandable and because it was customizable, we started getting a lot of other sellers coming in, and kept a really open communication channel with people to add more tools. So things like, trends, being able to isolate trends, put your sales plans in there. So if you have a lightning deal, if you have, something that you're going to be doing with your email list or with an influencer, those things can be programmed in. So you can take, let me look at last year's sales, but I also have, a 20% growth, over last year. So we'll do last year's sales plus that 20% growth, plus I'm doing a lightning deal, and then I'm doing this deal with, this influencer where I think I'm going to move 1,000 extra units. And so you can put all those things in. You can put all of your marketing plans into your inventory plans. So that's really one of the bigger differences, is it's not just using past data, which is the science of inventory. It's using your future planning, which is, the art side of inventory, which a lot of other tools are kind of lacking. And that's where we, found the opportunity to really improve some things.
That's awesome. I was so terrible when it comes to inventory planning. Every time I made so many mistakes when it comes to like planning the inventory for the future periods, especially like whenever we tried, like whenever there were days like Prime Day, or like when we prepared deal of the day, or like that kind of stuff. Like lightning deals were something that I would usually mess up, to be honest. So I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are having that kind of problems and issues. So they should definitely double check your software. So like, what's the website that they should go to?
Yeah, so SoStocked.com. And then if they have questions and they want to reach out to me, or if they want to watch a demo, it's SoStocked.com/connect. It'll have all my socials, and have some demo videos and access to. We do live demos every twice a week.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. When it comes to other stuff, like when it comes to inventory, we didn't really touch base a lot when it comes to doing PPC and lightning deals. So, and PPC plus inventory problems in like both directions. Like, what are your suggestions to make the most out of what you have from your inventory, combining with advertising and combining with lightning deals and other types of deals?
Yeah. So the first thing that we noticed, we're, as a community of Amazon sellers, we're very marketing focused, and we want to find things that are working and then really, push on the gas. So the other side of that is, at what point, if you do push on the gas, is that product going to stock out? So, you have to do something which is called vetting inventory. And I've talked to, PPC agents, I've talked to brand managers, aggregators. I actually did, for the first 2 years of SoStocked, I did all the one-on-one calls, and we do one-on-one calls with pretty much everyone who comes through the software and wants one. And that common denominator that I was finding, I would ask the question, how have you ever stocked your client out, for example, with, PPC agents? Oh yeah, and part of that was because a lot of companies and people were wanting to divorce themselves from handling inventory. Oh, the client handles the inventory, we just do the marketing. And that's starting to change. More companies are starting to realize that their work is very much affected by whether their client does a good job at inventory or not. So we're starting to see more and more that that's starting to change, that more companies are starting to take that responsibility. But that was the really, surprising thing. So what you need to do is really, when you set out to plan things, you need to get data from the inventory team, whether it's a solopreneur that has all that data, get that data, and then actually play out the scenario. That's one of the things that our software does, but it's something that you can do. You can even build we call it a timeline, an inventory timeline. Okay. And it will look at, the rolling count of how much, what's the daily average velocity for that product over the date. So we have this much inventory, and we know when we're going to stock out. And then we can add, okay, what if we immediately increase our sales by 15% with PPC, right? Plug that in, and you say, okay, well, obviously the stock out date, if we place no new orders, is going to shorten because we've increased the sales by 15%. And then what if we do a lightning deal in the middle of that too? Well, that's going to decrease it further. So now we have a brand new date that we have to actually place our order, and the inventory team can be in sync, and you can actually see, okay, 15% is actually going to stock you out before you can even get your inventory from your supplier. So maybe you rethink it, maybe it's 10%. Okay, we can do 10% safely, leave a little bit of a buffer just in case anything goes wrong at the ports or anything like that. So our software is looking at the lead times and all of that. That is something that you would want to build out within your system, is how do the lead times and the additional marketing affect the inventory? How does that change things? And we call that forecast modeling. And forecast modeling is really what you need to be using if you're going to be planning out inventory, right? It's, what if I do this, what if this happens? If I double my conversion, I do, new copy or new images, I double my conversion, or I increase my conversion by 10%. That's as significant as if you increased, PPC sales by 10%.
So basically, if you're a one-man show, like if you're a seller that is taking care of your inventory and advertising and everything, obviously you don't need to communicate with anybody else in your team, but you're doing everything on your own. Like, but like when it comes to all that, what is basically the frequency that you would like to take when it comes to double checking your inventory, and like how often do you want to double check your plan and like to see if like the numbers are okay? Like, is it something that you should do weekly or like bi-weekly or like monthly or so?
Yeah, so it depends on the business, but now that we've got these storage limits, weekly is probably a good idea, especially around, seasonality. It's just a good idea to check that. I know some people who check theirs daily. But, of course, that could be excessive for some businesses. But I think weekly right now. And then if you start, really getting comfortable with what's happening, it could go to monthly. But it's definitely something that should be, on the calendar, because you could say, okay, well, I'll do it weekly. And then you decide, not to do it 1 week. And then that 1 week turns into 3 weeks, and you turn around and all of a sudden you should have ordered 2 weeks ago. Something happened and you missed it. It's building in that habit. That's one of the reasons that we have sellers who do miss those things, is that they have to download all the reports. So when they are doing everything, it's one of the last things that they figure out and think about. And when it takes, 90 days to get that inventory, to be available for sale, you have to think ahead of time, very significantly in advance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, to be honest. And like that's super hard, especially if you're starting and you don't really have an idea of like how many units you're gonna sell. So yeah, definitely at the weekly level, I couldn't agree more. So is there anything else that you would like to talk about inventory and like how it affects like your business, and like how some advice that you would like to share with viewers?
Yeah, just a word on stockouts. We talked about overstocking, and overstocking now can create or lead to stockouts. But it's what if I do stock out? What if I stock out? There's a couple of tips that I like to share. One of them is to always have a fulfillment center. So even if you've stocked out at Amazon, you've got stuff that you've sent to Amazon, but they're just waiting a long time to check it in. Having that ability to fulfill through a fulfillment center, go FBM, the FBM sales will actually continue to count towards your sales velocity. So that will help you to make sure that when you actually do get back in stock, you don't have your restock limits plummet. So that's something to keep in mind. Maybe your sales will be a little bit less since you're not, under Prime, unless you're using seller fulfilled Prime. But those, some people don't realize that those FBM sales do count towards your restock limits. So that's kind of a number one is, having that ready. And then I like to have the rule of thumb is never let anyone have all of your inventory. And the reasoning behind that actually goes way back to, I think, the second Christmas that I ever started selling. We got all of our inventory and we sent it all into Amazon, and they proceeded to not check it in until after Christmas. So I think it arrived December 10th and they just didn't check it in until after Christmas. And we had nothing to sell because they had everything. So I see that problem, someone putting everything on a boat and then the boat taking too long. What we've started doing is we have, you have FBA, you have your local warehouse, and then you have your supplier who can hold things for you. And your supplier will usually hold things and they won't charge you for, say, you could have them hold things for up to 3 months sometimes, and they're not charging you warehousing fees if you have a good relationship with them. And they'll also only charge you the final payment on whatever you ship. So you may have them holding 10,000 units, ship 3,000 for the first month, and they're only charging you, you only have to pay your 70% final payment or whatever your terms are on those 3,000 that you shipped. So it helps with the cash flow, but you also have, we sent a bunch of stuff from our Chinese warehouse. It's going into our 3PL, then sent into Amazon, but we're afraid that our ship is not going to arrive on time. So we put most stuff on the ship, and then we left some inventory at the supplier's warehouse in case we have to air freight it over. So we don't know, the ship may make it on time and we won't have to use it, and we'll just send it in the next ship. But we are leaving that because, again, don't let someone have all your stuff. If your boat gets hung up for an extra 15 to 30 days, there's nothing you can do. But now we have the option of air freighting if we need to, and we'll only incur that cost if we need to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like combination of using plane and boat can like definitely improve everything. I know that the planes are definitely way more expensive way how to transfer your goods from China, especially, but on the other hand, you would prefer to have that kind of expense rather than to stock out.
Yeah, especially because of how much it affects your restock limits, and it'll affect your restock limits. You'll live with that for the next 90 days since they're looking at a rolling 90 days when they're looking at your sell-through rate. The FBA sell-through rate is not looking at a monthly, it's looking at 90 days. And they say that on their website.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and that's a really good point to know. So guys, it's not like short period of time that is double checked for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, awesome. So basically, if you're getting out of stock and you want to do advertising, like what do you suggest doing? Like, should you like turn off everything, or like should you like create like those nickel campaigns that are gonna like spend like just a couple of cents per click rather, or like should you like keep it like as it is, or like what is your suggestion? That's something that we as an agency are usually getting like a lot of questions when it comes to getting out of stock. Like, should we like pause everything, or should we just like slow it down, or like should we just ignore the current situation?
Right. Well, you know, when you do slow everything down, if you have to slow it down only to a point because you want to maintain those rankings. If you are trying to if you can prevent a stock out, and you have maybe a gap of a couple of days, and you can fill that gap in, slowing it down to the point of preventing that stock out would be, beneficial. But, one of the things to keep in mind, whether you sell everything, within this next week or over the next 3 weeks, it's still going to, you still only have that amount of inventory to sell for that amount of time. So it's still going to have some problems with your restock limit. That's not something to think about. I would say the more important thing to think about is that you've got your rankings. And so if you can slow it down, and still maintain your rankings, until you get back in stock, that would be helpful. But it's still the way that the algorithm is looking at your sales. It's looking at total sales for 90 days. So, preventing a stock out, for 1 week when, you still have the same amount of units to sell is not going to make that big a difference. I would suggest, if you do stock out on a main seller, look at what other inventory you could potentially do a flash sale on to help to bolster that limit and replace some of that sales velocity. Since, that slow seller going on sale, send an email to your list and say, hey, we're doing, a flash sale on this, help to continue to bolster that. Or if you've got, a newer one was, if you have MCF, if you've got Shopify and you have some good traffic on Shopify, you're using Deliver for now. Maybe switch on some, maybe switch velocities on and use the velocity from Shopify to bolster your sales. That's another thing that you could do, because those sales, if they're being fulfilled through Amazon is counting that towards your velocity and towards your sell through. And so that's kind of a little hack that you can use to find ways to, bolster sales in other areas to maintain that restock limit if possible.
That's a really good one. So we're almost over for today, almost half an hour. So is there anything else that you would like to add? Like, how can people reach out to you? Like, and so like how to contact you?
Sure. Yeah. So SoStocked.com/connect. You'll be able to see, all of my socials. You'll be able to see a demo of the software and, any questions that you might have. I think I have a webinar that I do. So I think there was a webinar link on there. If I do teachings and talk about what are the systems to have in place for inventory management, whether you use, SoStocked or you're using something else, what are those systems, especially within this new world that we're living in with these restock limits.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the talk today. It was a pleasure. And hopefully we're going to talk. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.